Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in our series, Contemporary Issues. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah's peace and blessings be on each and every one of you. Dear viewers, we continue to look at some of the pressing issues in our times. Issues concerning Islamic culture, which has been brought into question. How relevant is this culture today? The issue concerning the Taliban in Afghanistan, where the Taliban had insisted that women put on the chador, cover themselves completely. This was a major affront to the Western world. The Western feminists were up in arms. This covering of women, this is, going back to the Dark Ages. It is degrading for women. These kind of things. What about this covering of the woman, the Muslim woman? This is a big question today. Western feminists consider Muslim women to be the last frontier, where that they have to break down and ensure rights of women to be able to express themselves. Well, let us look at some of the concepts behind Western dress. Okay, when we look into the Western fashion industry over the last century, from the 1900s to the year 2000, which we are now, what has happened? At the turn of the century, beginning of the 20th century, what you found was that women in the West were covered from head to toe. They were covered from head to toe, virtually like Muslim women. They're wearing things on their heads and dresses, full-length dresses, all these kinds of things. Now, women walk the streets, especially in summer, virtually naked. Not just the beaches, the streets. Clothing, okay, where they have to wear clothing because it's a bit cold or cool, clothing becomes so tight, it is like as if somebody took a spray can and just sprayed on the clothing. So they may as well be naked, completely. They're clothed, but yet unclothed. As the Prophet spoke about times that would come. The point is that the Western fashion industry has involved itself in a process of removing the clothing of Western women, systematically, shortening it, lowering, arms, everything, until virtually she walks the beach with little strings on her body. The rest of her body is totally naked. This is the norm today. At the same time, there has been a rise in another phenomena, a crime, the crime of rape. That over that 100 years, you found that as clothing was dropping, the same rate or similar rate to the removal of clothing, we find a rise in rape. So much so that by the beginning of the 90s, in the United States alone, they reported that their rapes had crossed the 100,000 mark. And this was the reported rapes, where people reported to the police. And researchers calculated or estimated that the actual number was some 7 to 10 times that amount. So you're talking about 1 million rapes. 1 million rapes. 1 million people being raped. In the Philippines, and recently I read a newspaper that 9 women are raped every day. 9 women raped every day. In America, that number is far greater. Over 1 million raped every year. Is there not a relationship? There are more laws which have come into effect to protect the women and protect their rights and everything else. Women's rights, crimes, even the crime of rape has been more seriously dealt with now than it was in the past, etc., etc. But the rise in rape is still increasing. Why? Women, if their question and this issue is raised to them, what about this nakedness? Well, they say, well, no, a woman should be free to dress as she pleases. You know, why? Why? It should be on the man. The man should be restrained. But this nakedness does encourage. It's not only that, along with the nakedness, the woman, this undressed woman, is now used to advertise everything. All of your major products are being advertised by naked women, or virtually naked women. You want to sell a car, sports car. What do? You tell them about the engine size and the power, show the engine, the motor, and the workings of it, and how fast it goes, etc. No. You want to sell that car, you show a model, bright fire engine red, with a woman lying on top of it in a bikini. This is how you sell it. Why? That bikini is sending a message to the people. You buy the car, this is what you're going to get. Similarly, you want to sell a shaver, a new electric shaver. It's got new blades and, titanium, whatever. But you don't bother to go into all of this, how it shaves. Instead, what you do is you show a picture of a man with his electric shaver, and there's a hand holding his. This hand has got red fingernails. What is the message being told here? You buy this electric shaver, you're going to have that female hand holding your hand. These are all messages, subliminal messages being pumped into the society, raising the sexual tension of the society, stripping the female. And even in the dress, if we look at the concepts of dress, what is the purpose of dress in the West? The purpose is first and foremost to expose as much of the body as possible. That is the main purpose. For men and women, to expose as much of the body as possible. The second purpose is beauty. The third purpose is protecting the body from the elements. And the last purpose may be to cover what may be classified legally as private parts. What may be classified legally as private parts. And that, in many places, becomes a very limited area. I know recently in Canada, women fought for legislation in Toronto to have the right to walk topless in the streets. Obviously during the summers. In the winters, you could die from that. In the summers, when men normally walk topless, they call it bare-chested, wearing their shorts in the summer, it's warm. They're saying it's a crime. Before that, it was a crime for women to do the same. Why should it be a crime? The women argued. If men can do it, why can't we? Well, the fact that men may be attracted to us when we're topless, well, we're attracted to men when they're walking like this too. So they argued their point and they won. And legislation came in which permitted them to do so. This happened a couple of years back. Still, we don't find women walking in the summer downtown topless. You still find men walking bare-chested, but no women. Why? They have the right now. Because the consequence. People know the consequence. Though you might establish this right legally, you know the consequence of applying that right. The reality, from Islamic perspective, when Islam prescribed the dress for women, Allah said there in Surah Al-Ahzab, the 33rd chapter, verse 59, يُدْنِينَ عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ جَلَابِيبِهِنَّ ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَنْ يُعْرَفْنَ وَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ. Let them cast their outer garments over their bodies. That is best in order that they be known and not be harmed. Allah explains there, in order that they be known and not be harmed. Very important points. That they be known. Known in what sense? Because some people think that the women cover up so that they are not known. People won't notice them. So some ignorant Muslims going to the West say, well, we shouldn't wear our hijab, we shouldn't cover ourselves up in the West, because when we do that, people will notice us, people will look at us. We try to be, inconspicuous. So the best thing is to dress like the Western women. That way, nobody's going to look twice at us because we're like everybody else. This is the argument. The reality, this is not what Allah said in the Quran. Allah said that they should wear this to be known. Known in what sense? Known in the sense that if a man or a group of men, whatever in the society, they see a nun walking down the street, a nun, she wears her habit, that is a covering, looking just almost like the hijab. She's wearing the traditional one, which is not the modern nuns who now wear little things on their heads and mini skirts and things like this, But the traditional nuns from the traditional orders that maintain the full habit, covering everything except for their face and their hands. When they see a nun walking down the street, of course, this catches their attention. It's something unusual. You don't see nuns walking on the street all the time, so they will look at the woman. And if they see a woman walking out of her house in bikini, they will also look at that woman. Now, the point here is what? Is the way in which they look at the nun the same as the way they look at the woman in the bikini? No. It's not the same. In both cases, they're looking. Curiosity is involved. But in one case, when they look at the nun, they're looking at the nun knowing that she is not available. Her dress, her habit is telling, is a fashion statement. She's saying, I am not available. Don't even think about approaching me. She wears a ring on her hand saying she's married to Jesus. Finish. Don't even think about it. The woman in the bikini, what is she saying? Of course, women in bikinis will say, no, I'm not saying I'm available. But the reality is you're saying, hey, look at me. Look at what I've got. For what purpose? Why? Isn't this not teasing and encouraging? Yes, it does. It is basically saying, I am available. That's the reality. Now the law says no. But the reality says yes. So when a woman wears her hijab, or covering everything except her face and hands, covering the face is generally held by scholars to be recommended, not compulsory, although some scholars hold that it is compulsory. When a woman dresses in this fashion, she is making a fashion statement. She is saying, I am not available also, except by honorable means. I mean, you cannot flirt with me, I'm not, if you are interested in marriage, interested in me, it's got to be in marriage. You approach my father, my brother, my male relatives, and then it can be considered. Otherwise, don't think about it. So she is making a fashion statement. That she be known. Known as what? Known as a virtuous woman. Known as a chaste and virtuous woman in the society. This is the intent, first and foremost. Secondly, as Allah explained, that she not be harmed. That this covering of the woman is going to minimize the harm. Of course, one can argue, some people will say, well, people wear, some women will say, I wear all of this, and the men will still be approaching me. Yes, but imagine if you were wearing a bikini. Please, don't compare, don't simply say that simply because you're wearing all of this, it hasn't stopped advances. The reality is that, yes, there may be some advances still happening, but it's still not the same as if you expose yourself. It's not going to be the same. Some nuns are raped. Nuns are raped in different parts of the world. It happens. As women who wear complete covering will get raped also. It can happen. But the rate, the number of, if you compare the numbers who are exposed to that, and, who are nuns and those who are not, and the proportions, we can see that the numbers of nuns who are raped are far more insignificant than the numbers of women who are raped, while dressing themselves in a variety of different ways. There are some arguments that, hey, rape is not about this thing here, it is about control. It's like men who are on some kind of power trip and control trip. They're about trying, so they don't really care how you're dressed. They're going to do that. Yes, there may be an element of that there too. But, and in war times, etc., you find people doing this. But that does not rule out the large number of cases where rape is strictly from desire. It has nothing to do with control. I want to control you. I want you. It's a desire. The desire which is pumped up and increased by the unclothing of females. And clothing in the sense of either removing their clothing or having them wear clothing so tight as to expose all of their private parts. So, from the Islamic perspective, Islam holds that when a woman exposes herself like that, she opens herself up to harm. When Islam covers up the women like this, at the same time it says, men, if you do not observe this, you rape a woman, the penalty for you is death. Very severe penalties for rape. But that severe penalty, and of course a lot of the feminists would say, yeah, good, rape, kill the men. You know, they would push for that. Kill the men who commit rape. In India, there was a movement amongst women feminists calling for killing the men. But the women wear these saris with these tops which are skin tight, which are exposing their parts of their body, the whole middle section, etc. And they say, kill the men who want to rape us. This doesn't work. These things have to be balanced. On one hand, yes, if a man rapes, you're going to kill this person. But on the other hand, the woman should be covered so as not to encourage. It must be balanced here. So, Islam seeks to protect the woman by having her clothed. And the hijab, this covering, is an expression of also separation in the society. That she functions in one area of the society where there are not a lot of men around. She doesn't function in a situation where they're mixing with men. Why? Because whenever this happens, women suffer. In Bangkok today, they have separate buses for women and for men. And this is a society which is not talking about, women's rights and this kind of thing. They separated them. Why? Not because they feel that, women need to be separated from men normally, but because women were suffering so much on those buses, the crowded buses, they were suffering. In Japan today, there was a number of reports they've hired special police that are going to go in these bullet trains, where people are packed in like sardines, to catch the gropers. Because women are suffering. And also, we know it in big cities like New York City, in the subways, in the tube in London, during rush hour when people are crushed together. What happens? What happens to women in these circumstances? They get it. So Islam seeks to make a separation in order to protect the women from the harm. Or is it because men are normally harmful and evil? No, not necessarily. But because of putting people in close proximity, of removing the clothing of people, this encourages and promotes this kind of corruption. And this is very important, where you have cases where we talk about pedophilia, where adults molest children and this type of thing. We have to consider this, that how little children are being dressed today. I mean, it's not to say this justifies pedophilia. As we say that the nakedness of women don't justify rape, it's still a crime from Islamic perspective. But in a way, their little girls are being dressed in such ways. They're wearing tights and skin thises and exposing their little bodies and these type of things and prancing around, and then, in societies where men, showing affection and molesting them. And actually, much of the molestation takes place within the family itself. It's the uncles and the brothers and the cousins and these type of things, mostly molesting the little kids. So we have to be conscious. We have to be aware. I don't say that little kids have to wear all hijab, these type of things, but we have to be very moderate and modest in the way that we dress our children to protect them from the potential harm that is there in the society. With that, dear viewers, we'd like to stop here on the issues of hijab. We're going to continue in our next segment in this area because it is a topic which one sitting cannot possibly do justice. We need to look a little further into issues of separation and the covering of the Muslim women. So I hope you will continue to follow our program, be with us in the next segment, And until then, I bid you farewell. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.